안녕하세요, 안차키입니다. Glad you could join us on this edition of Let's Speak Korean. 지승현 선생님, 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요. 안녕하세요, 지승현입니다. Well, stay with us and you will learn some more useful Korean expressions with us. Well, 만나서 반갑습니다.
Now, in our last lesson, we learned how to use expressions asking about one's objective and also stating one's objective. Now, let's get a quick review now. 선생님, 오늘 뭐 할 거예요?
집에서 쉬려고 합니다.
I see. So, when you want to state your objective, all you have to do is use the expression 려고 합니다 or 으려고 합니다. Right? Well, in this lesson, we are going to learn how to request something of someone politely, right? Let's take a look at the clip first.
어서 오십시오. 어떻게 오셨습니까?
소포를 보내려고 합니다.
어디에 보냅니까?
싱가포르에 보내려고 합니다.
안에 무엇이 있습니까?
책입니다.
이 우표를 붙이십시오. 그리고 다시 저에게 주십시오.
네.
Now, as in our last lesson, Michael is at the post office, but instead of sending a letter, as he did in our last lesson, he wants to send a package. Now, the expressions that we will learn are similar to those that we have already learned in our past lesson. Now, the post worker very politely tells Michael to stick the stamps on his package and then give it back. So in this lesson, we're going to learn how to make polite requests of someone. Now, let's get a check of the expressions then. We'll learn how to use 으십시오 or 십시오 to come up with some polite requests asking someone to do something. Now, before we get into that, let's go over some new vocabulary. Please repeat after 선생님.
주소를 쓰다. 주소를 쓰다. 우표를 붙이다. 우표를 붙이다. 상자를 열다. 상자를 열다. 끈으로 묶다. 끈으로 묶다.
Well done. Now let's take a look at how these words are used in everyday conversation.
이 우표를 붙이십시오. 그리고 다시 저에게 주십시오. 이 우표를 붙이십시오. 그리고 다시 저에게 주십시오.
Now, what did the post worker say while giving the stamps to Michael?
이 우표를 붙이십시오. 이 우표를 붙이십시오.
And what did the post worker say after that?
그리고 다시 저에게 주십시오. 그리고 다시 저에게 주십시오.
Okay, the post worker very politely tells Michael to stick the stamps on his package and then give it back to her. Now, she uses the expressions 붙이십시오 and 주십시오. Now, both of these expressions contain a verb stem plus 십시오. Now, 선생님, when do we use the expressions 으십시오 and when do we use the expression 십시오?
Well, it also depends on how the verb stem ends. When the verb stem ends in either a vowel or the character lir, we use 십시오. But when the verb stem ends in a consonant, we use 으십시오. Don't forget that when it ends in the character lir, we leave it out and add 십시오. Okay, here are some examples. 주소를 쓰다 becomes 주소를 쓰십시오. 상자를 열다 becomes 상자를 여십시오. 끈으로 묶다 becomes 끈으로 묶으십시오.
Now, isn't it the same to add either 세요 or 으세요 to the verb stem to come up with a request?
You're right. It would have the same meaning, but you want to use 십시오 rather than 세요 when you want to be a little more polite.
I see. Now then, let's use the vocabulary that we learned earlier to together with the expression 으십시오 to practice some more then.
주소를 쓰다. 주소를 쓰십시오. 우표를 붙이다. 우표를 붙이십시오. 상자를 열다. 상자를 여십시오. 끈으로 묶다. 끈으로 묶으십시오.
Now then, let's practice some more by asking and answering some questions. Now, let's use the question form 뭘 할까요? Now, we're going to leave the subject 제가, that is I, out. Now, it doesn't change the meaning, so don't worry. So the question would be, what should I do? Right. Please join us for the drill exercise. 뭘 할까요?
주소를 쓰십시오.
뭘 할까요?
우표를 붙이십시오.
뭘 할까요?
상자를 여십시오.
뭘 할까요?
끈으로 묶으십시오.
Time now for some extra expressions. Now, the post worker tells Michael to bring her back the package after he is done sticking on the stamps. Now, what was the expression in Korean?
다시 저에게 주십시오.
This means give it back to me. Now, 다시 is a new word here meaning again. And in the expression 저에게, 에게 means to, so it means to me. Now, why don't you try saying it for yourself?
다시 저에게 주십시오. 다시 저에게 주십시오.
It's time to wrap up what we have learned up to this point by going over the expressions one by one along with the clip.
어서 오십시오. 어떻게 오셨습니까?
어서 오십시오. 어떻게 오셨습니까?
소포를 보내려고 합니다.
소포를 보내려고 합니다.
어디에 보냅니까?
어디에 보냅니까?
싱가포르에 보내려고 합니다.
싱가포르에 보내려고 합니다.
안에 무엇이 있습니까?
안에 무엇이 있습니까?
책입니다.
책입니다.
이 우표를 붙이십시오.
이 우표를 붙이십시오.
그리고 다시 저에게 주십시오.
그리고 다시 저에게 주십시오.
Here's the entire clip once again, so please use this section to memorize the expressions.
어서 오십시오. 어떻게 오셨습니까?
소포를 보내려고 합니다.
어디에 보냅니까?
싱가포르에 보내려고 합니다.
안에 무엇이 있습니까?
책입니다.
이 우표를 붙이십시오. 그리고 다시 저에게 주십시오.
Now, following up on our last lesson, we are going to take a closer look at the double vowel sound 의 and the cases when it is pronounced as e. All right, in our last lesson, we learned how 의 is pronounced as e when a different consonant takes the place of the consonant iung. Right, this time we'll learn that this also happens when the character 의 shows up after the first letter in a word. All right, let's repeat after 선생님.
회의, 회의, 강의, 강의.
Now let's look at the third case when the double vowel 의 is pronounced as 에 instead of e. All right, now this is getting a little bit confusing, but this is when the letter 의 functions as a possessive particle. All right, let's take a look at what this means. Here, the letter 의 functions as a possessive particle. In this case, the letter 의 is usually pronounced as 에. Now, try saying the following examples after 선생님.
어머니의 구두, 어머니의 구두. 마이클의 친구, 마이클의 친구.
Now, the variations of the double vowel sound 의 may be a little bit confusing for you, but remember that it's important to learn the accurate pronunciation so that you will be better understood when you speak the Korean language. All right. Well, I'm afraid we've run out of time for this edition of Let's Speak Korean. Well, in this lesson, we learned how to use the expression 으십시오 to come up with some polite expressions to use in formal settings and when we're talking with people that we're not too familiar with. Let's get a quick review before we go now. 선생님, 뭘 드릴까요?
볼펜을 주십시오.
여기 있습니다.
고맙습니다.
네. All right, well, let's wrap it up for now. And until next time, 안녕히 계세요.